What happens when the person who brings life back into your home isn't your spouse? When the smile you've been waiting for doesn't belong to the one wearing your ring? This is the story of Melissa, a woman who thought hiring help would solve her problems. Instead, it exposed everything that was broken. A story of loneliness, unexpected connection, and a choice that would change 3 lives forever. By the end of this video, you'll understand how easily the line between gratitude and desire can blur, and how one moment of vulnerability can unravel everything you thought you knew about yourself. But before we dive in, I need to be honest with you. This video took over 15 hours to research, write, and produce. The interviews, the fact-checking, the scripting, it's a labor of love. If you appreciate the work that goes into uncovering and telling stories like this, please consider subscribing. It genuinely helps us continue making content that digs deeper than surface-level drama. Now let's begin. It all began on a warm evening in Houston, Texas. David and Melissa had been married for 8 years, a beautiful couple in everyone's eyes. High school sweethearts who made it work. David, a successful architect, was the provider. Melissa ran a small but growing fashion business from their spacious home in the suburbs. On paper, they had everything. A 3-bedroom house with a backyard. 2 cars. Date nights once a month. Anniversary trips. They smiled in photos. They held hands at church. But inside those walls, something had quietly died. Melissa couldn't remember the last time David had really looked at her. Not glanced. Not nodded. But looked. The way he used to when they were young, when her laugh could pull him out of any mood. Now his eyes were always on his phone. Work emails at dinner. Conference calls during breakfast. Late nights in his home office. The glow of his laptop casting shadows across his tired face. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't angry. He was just absent. Melissa tried. She cooked his favorite meals. She asked about his projects. She suggested weekend getaways. But every attempt was met with maybe next month, or I'm just swamped right now, babe. The loneliness crept in slowly like fog. At first, it was just quiet evenings. Then it was entire weekends where they barely spoke. The laughter that once filled their home was replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of David typing. One morning, Melissa sat at the kitchen island with her coffee, staring at the pile of laundry, the unwashed dishes, the empty rooms that suddenly felt too big. She sighed and whispered to herself, I can't do this alone anymore. Maybe some help around here will make things easier. It wasn't just about the chores. Deep down, she knew that. She needed someone in that house who would notice her, who would see her. 3 days later, she hired Clara. Clara was 23, fresh-faced, with kind eyes and a soft voice. She had recently moved to Houston from a small town, looking for work and a fresh start. When Melissa interviewed her, Clara's resume was thin, but her smile was genuine. There was something about her, an openness, a lightness, that Melissa found immediately comforting. I promise I'm a fast learner, Clara said nervously, fidgeting with her hands. I just really need this opportunity. Melissa hired her on the spot. Clara started the following Monday. She arrived at 8 a.m., quiet and respectful, moving through the house like she was afraid to disturb anything. She cleaned efficiently, organized thoughtfully, and always asked before touching Melissa's things. David barely noticed her. To him, Clara was furniture. Useful, necessary, but not worth a second glance. He'd nod politely when they crossed paths, maybe grunt a thanks if she brought him coffee, and that was it. But Melissa noticed everything. She noticed how Clara hummed while folding laundry. How she left little sticky notes on the fridge. Reminders, grocery lists, cheerful messages like, have a great day. She noticed the way Clara smiled when Melissa entered a room, like she was genuinely happy to see her. At first, their conversations were surface level. The weather, weekend plans, Clara's adjustment to city life. But slowly, they started talking about real things. Melissa shared stories about her fashion business, her frustrations with difficult clients. Clara opened up about her own life. Leaving home, missing her family, trying to figure out who she was in a city that felt overwhelming. One afternoon, while Clara was folding towels in the living room, Melissa made a joke about David's picky eating habits. How he refused to eat anything green unless it was avocado. Clara burst out laughing, and Melissa realized it was the first time she'd heard real laughter in that house in months. After that, something shifted. Melissa found herself looking forward to Clara's arrival each morning. She'd make extra coffee. She'd linger in the kitchen, asking questions, sharing more than she needed to. And Clara, sweet, attentive Clara, always listened. The days felt lighter. The house felt warmer. For the first time in a long time, Melissa didn't feel invisible. But there was something else, too. Something Melissa didn't want to name. A flutter in her chest when Clara smiled. A warmth that spread through her when their hands accidentally touched while washing dishes. A longing she hadn't felt in years, but not for David. For Clara, she told herself it was nothing. Just gratitude. Just loneliness playing tricks on her mind. But deep down, she knew the truth was more complicated. And then, 1 week later, David left for a business trip to Dallas. Okay, pause for a second. Before we continue, what would you have done in Melissa's situation? When your marriage feels empty and someone else makes you feel alive again, do you pull away? Do you address it with your spouse? Or do you let yourself feel what you're feeling? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to see different perspectives on this. David left on a Thursday evening. He kissed Melissa on the forehead, a mechanical gesture, void of passion, and rolled his suitcase out the door. I'll be back Sunday night, he called over his shoulder. Love you. The door closed. The house fell silent. Melissa stood in the entryway for a long moment, staring at the space David had just occupied. She felt nothing, no sadness, no longing, just the familiar emptiness that had become her constant companion. Friday morning, Clara arrived as usual. But this time, when Melissa offered her coffee, Clara hesitated and said, "You know, if you ever want company in the evenings while Mr. David is away, I don't mind staying a little later. I know big houses can feel lonely." Melissa's heart skipped. Really? You wouldn't mind? Clara smiled. Not at all. I like being here. That evening, Clara stayed. They ordered takeout, Thai food that David would have complained about, and sat on the couch together. At first, they talked about nothing important. Favorite movies, childhood memories. Clara told stories about growing up in a town where everyone knew everyone, and Melissa talked about the dreams she had before marriage, before life got so small. As the night went on, the conversation grew deeper, more vulnerable. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said softly, her eyes serious. "Are you happy?" Melissa froze. No one had asked her that in years, not even herself. She looked down at her wedding ring, twisting it around her finger. "I don't know. I think I forgot what happy feels like." Clara reached over and gently placed her hand on Melissa's. "You deserve to feel happy. You know that, right?" The touch sent electricity through Melissa's body. She looked up, and for the first time, she allowed herself to really see Clara. Not as the maid, not as the help, but as a woman. A beautiful, kind, attentive woman who made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Clara, Melissa's voice trembled. "I don't know what's happening to me." Clara's thumb brushed softly across Melissa's knuckles. "Maybe you don't have to know right now. Maybe it's okay to just feel." The space between them felt impossibly small. Melissa's breath caught. Every rational thought screamed at her to pull away, to end this before it started. But her body didn't move. Her hand didn't retreat. Instead, she leaned in. The kiss was soft, tentative, like testing the temperature of water before diving in. But when Clara kissed her back, something inside Melissa broke open. Months of loneliness, years of feeling unseen, decades of not understanding her own desires. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Neither spoke. The silence was thick, electric, terrifying. Clara stood abruptly. I should go." "Wait." Melissa reached for her, but Clara was already gathering her things. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered, tears in her eyes. "I shouldn't have." "No," Melissa said firmly, standing. "Don't apologize. Please." They stood facing each other, the weight of what just happened settling between them. "I'll see you Monday," Clara said quietly and left. Melissa stood alone in her living room, her fingers touching her lips, her mind racing. What had she just done? Melissa didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the kiss over and over. The softness of Clara's lips, the warmth of her hand, the way her heart had raced in a way it hadn't in years, maybe ever. But with the memory came the guilt. Heavy, suffocating. She looked at David's empty side of the bed, his pillow, his nightstand with his book and reading glasses. The man she had promised to love for better or worse, in sickness and health, till death do them part. "What am I doing?" she whispered into the darkness. What the hell am I doing? Saturday morning, she called her best friend, Angela. They met for coffee at their usual spot. You look exhausted, Angela said immediately. Everything okay? Melissa wanted to tell her everything, wanted to scream it out, to have someone tell her she wasn't crazy, that what she was feeling wasn't wrong. But the words stuck in her throat. Just stress, she lied. The business. You know how it is. Angela nodded sympathetically, and they talked about safe things. Kids. Work. The latest Netflix series. But Melissa's mind was elsewhere. That night, Clara texted her. I'm sorry about last night. If you want me to stop coming, I understand. Melissa stared at the message for 10 full minutes before responding. Please don't stop coming. We need to talk. Sunday was agony. David would be home that evening. Melissa cleaned the house top to bottom, trying to distract herself. She cooked his favorite dinner. She put on makeup. She told herself she would be normal, that she would bury what happened and move forward. But when David walked through the door at 8 p.m., exhausted and barely acknowledging her beyond a tired hey, all Melissa could think about was Clara's hand on hers. How was the trip? Melissa asked, her voice hollow. Productive. Exhausting. David dropped his bag and headed straight for the shower. I'm beat. Let's just order something. She had cooked his favorite meal. It sat on the table, growing cold. Melissa sat alone in the dining room and cried. Monday morning came. Melissa's heart pounded as she waited for Clara to arrive. When the doorbell rang at 8 a.m., she nearly jumped out of her skin. Clara stood at the door, looking nervous, her eyes searching Melissa's face for any sign of anger or regret. Hi, Clara said softly. Hi. Melissa stepped aside. Come in. They didn't talk about it right away. Clara started her usual routine, laundry, dishes, tidying the living room. But the air between them was different. Charged. Every glance felt loaded. Every accidental touch felt intentional. Around noon, David left for a site visit. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, Clara and Melissa found themselves standing in the kitchen, alone. We should talk, Melissa said. I know. Clara wrung her hands. Melissa, I never meant to. Neither did I. Melissa stepped closer. But I can't stop thinking about it. Clara's eyes widened. You can't. No. Melissa's voice broke. I can't stop thinking about you. The confession hung in the air between them. This is wrong, Clara whispered, but she didn't move away. I know. Melissa reached up, her hand trembling, and brushed a strand of hair from Clara's face. But it doesn't feel wrong. They stood like that for a long moment, inches apart, breathing each other's air. And then Clara closed the distance and kissed her. Deeper this time, more certain. When they broke apart, both were shaking. What are we doing? Clara asked, her voice barely audible. I don't know, Melissa admitted. But I don't want to stop. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a dangerous rhythm. When David was home, they were careful, professional, distant. But the moment he left, for work, for meetings, for anything, Melissa and Clara came together like magnets. They talked for hours. They laughed. They touched. They kissed. And slowly, what started as stolen moments became something more. Something real. Melissa felt alive again. But the guilt never left. Every time she looked at David, she felt it, a knife twisting in her chest. She told herself she would end it, that she would confess, that she would figure out what she really wanted. But she didn't, because for the first time in years, she felt like herself. And she wasn't ready to give that up. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, David came home early from a meeting that was canceled. He opened the front door and called out, Melissa? Upstairs in the bedroom, Melissa and Clara froze. Clara's hands still tangled in Melissa's hair, their lips still inches apart. They heard David's footsteps on the stairs. Okay, this is where things get really intense. Who do you think is really at fault here? Is it Melissa for pursuing something outside her marriage? David for emotionally neglecting his wife? Clara for crossing professional boundaries? Or is it more complicated than blame? Let me know in the comments. And if you're seeing patterns or perspectives I haven't mentioned, definitely share those too. Time slowed down. Melissa's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Clara's face went pale, her eyes wide with panic. Melissa. David's voice called again, closer now. His footsteps creaked on the stairs. Clara jumped back, frantically smoothing her hair, her shirt. Melissa stood frozen, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. Could they pretend nothing was happening? Could they? The bedroom door opened. David stood in the doorway, his briefcase still in hand, his tie loosened. His eyes moved from Melissa to Clara, then back to Melissa. The confusion on his face was immediate. What's going on? His voice was careful, measured. Why is Clara up here? Melissa's mouth opened, but no words came out. Clara looked like she might be sick. I was just, Clara started, but her voice cracked. I was helping Mrs. Melissa with. With what? David's tone sharpened. He wasn't stupid. The air in the room was too thick, too charged. Something was wrong, and he could feel it. Melissa found her voice. David, I can explain. Explain what? He set his briefcase down slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. Melissa, what the hell is going on? The silence stretched unbearably. And then, in a moment of raw, reckless honesty, Melissa said the words that would change everything. I'm not happy. David blinked. What? I'm not happy, she repeated, her voice stronger now. I haven't been happy in years. David's face shifted from confusion to anger. So what? You're having an affair with the maid. Clara flinched at the word. Melissa felt something snap inside her. Don't talk about her like that, Melissa said sharply. This isn't her fault. Then whose fault is it? David's voice rose. Mine, because I work hard to give you everything you need. Everything I need? Melissa laughed bitterly. David, when was the last time you actually looked at me? When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you cared about anything in my life besides whether dinner was ready when you got home? David's jaw clenched. That's not fair. Isn't it? Tears streamed down Melissa's face now. I've been drowning, David. Drowning in this house, in this marriage, and you didn't even notice. So you turned to her? He gestured at Clara, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. She saw me, Melissa whispered. That's all. She just saw me. The room fell silent. David stood there, his face a mix of anger, hurt, and something else, realization maybe. The understanding that his wife was right. That somewhere along the way, he had stopped seeing her. But the hurt won out. Get out, he said to Clara, his voice low and dangerous. David, Melissa started. I said get out. He pointed at the door. Now. Clara grabbed her bag, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Melissa one last time. A look full of apology, fear, and something that might have been love, and ran from the room. The front door slammed moments later. David and Melissa stood facing each other, the wreckage of their marriage scattered between them. The argument that followed was brutal. Years of resentment, loneliness, and unspoken pain exploded in that bedroom. David accused Melissa of betrayal, of throwing away 8 years for a childish crush. Melissa fired back that he had betrayed her long before Clara ever arrived, that he had abandoned their marriage emotionally while still expecting her to play the role of devoted wife. You made me feel invisible, Melissa screamed. Do you have any idea what that's like? To live with someone who doesn't see you. So cheating was the answer? David shot back. You could have talked to me. I tried. Melissa's voice broke. I tried so many times, David. But you were always too busy, too tired, too distracted. When was I supposed to talk to you? Between your conference calls? During the 10 minutes you're home, before you fall asleep? David had no answer for that. Because she was right. Deep down, he knew she was right. The fight went on for hours. They said things they couldn't take back. Dredged up old wounds. Accused. Defended. Cried. Screamed. And when the anger finally burned itself out, they sat on opposite sides of the bed, exhausted and hollow. What do you want? David asked quietly. Do you want a divorce? Melissa looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time in months. She saw the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. But she also saw a stranger. Someone she had grown away from. Someone who had grown away from her. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what I want. Do you love her? David's voice was barely a whisper. Melissa closed her eyes. Did she? Was it love? Or was it just the intoxicating feeling of being wanted, being seen, being alive again? I don't know that either, she said honestly. But I know I can't keep living like this. Pretending we're okay when we're not. David nodded slowly. So what do we do? I think. Melissa took a shaky breath. I think we need space. Time to figure out who we are without each other. David stood, grabbed his jacket. I'll stay at a hotel tonight. He paused at the door, his hand on the frame. Without turning around, he said, For what it's worth. I'm sorry. I should have been better. I should have seen you. And then he left. Melissa sat alone in the silent house, the same house that had felt like a prison for months. But now, instead of feeling relief, she felt only emptiness. She pulled out her phone and stared at Clara's contact. Her thumb hovered over the call button, but she didn't press it, because whatever happened next, Melissa needed to figure out who she was first. Not as David's wife, not as Clara's, whatever she was, just as Melissa. She set the phone down and let herself cry. Did that outcome surprise you? Or did you see it coming from the start? And here's the deeper question. Do you think Melissa made the right choice by being honest, or should she have kept it hidden to save her marriage? Comment below. No judgment either way. The next few weeks were chaos. David moved into a hotel, then into a temporary apartment. They agreed to trial separation. No lawyers yet, no formal divorce proceedings. Just space. Melissa tried to reach Clara multiple times, but Clara never answered. Eventually, Melissa drove to Clara's apartment, only to find it empty. The landlord told her Clara had broken her lease and left town. No forwarding address. No goodbye. Just gone. Melissa felt the loss like a physical ache. Not just Clara, but everything. Her marriage, her certainty, her sense of self. She had blown up her entire life. And for what? A connection that lasted mere weeks? A feeling that might have been nothing more than an escape from her loneliness? She threw herself into her fashion business, working 16-hour days to avoid thinking. Her friends noticed something was wrong, but she kept deflecting. Only Angela pushed hard enough to break through. "Where's David?" Angela asked one afternoon over wine. "I haven't seen you two together in weeks." Melissa finally broke. She told Angela everything. The loneliness, Clara, the kiss, the confrontation, the separation. Angela listened without judgment, then asked the question Melissa had been avoiding. "What do you actually want?" "I have no idea," Melissa admitted. "I thought I wanted Clara, but maybe I just wanted to feel something. Anything." "And David?" Melissa sighed. "I don't know if we can fix this. I don't even know if I want to. But I also don't know if I threw away something worth fighting for." Angela squeezed her hand. "Then maybe that's what you need to figure out. Not what you want with Clara or David, but what you want for yourself. 6 months later, Melissa and David met for coffee. It was awkward at first, two people who had once shared everything, now struggling to make small talk. But slowly they found their rhythm. They talked honestly, maybe for the first time in years. David admitted he had been distant, that he had taken Melissa for granted. He had started therapy and was working on understanding how he'd let his marriage crumble while thinking he was doing everything right by being a provider. Melissa admitted her own failings, that she had sought connection outside the marriage instead of fighting harder for it within, that she still didn't fully understand her own feelings, but she was working on it. They didn't get back together. Not that day. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But they agreed to try couples counseling, to see if there was anything left worth saving. And if not, to at least end things with respect and understanding rather than anger and blame. As for Clara, Melissa never heard from her again. She didn't know if Clara regretted what happened, or if she had simply moved on to another life, another city, another chance at something uncomplicated. Sometimes late at night, Melissa still thought about her, about the way Clara made her feel alive, about what might have been if circumstances were different. But she also learned something important. Running toward someone because they make you feel good isn't the same as running toward something real. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't pursuing what feels exciting. It's doing the hard work to understand yourself first. Melissa started her own therapy. She joined a support group for LGBTQ+ individuals questioning their sexuality later in life. She learned that her attraction to Clara was real, that her feelings were valid, but that she needed to understand herself before she could have a healthy relationship with anyone, man or woman. The journey was messy. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, nights where she questioned everything. But for the first time in years, Melissa felt like she was moving forward. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's crush, just as Melissa. And that, she realized, was what she had been missing all along. So here's my question for you. What's the biggest lesson you're taking away from this story? Is it about honesty in marriage? Understanding your own identity? The danger of emotional neglect? Or something else entirely? I'd genuinely love to hear your perspective in the comments. Stories like Melissa's are more common than we think. According to recent studies, emotional infidelity and sexuality exploration within marriages are increasingly being brought into therapy rooms across America. The conversation around marriage, monogamy, and self-discovery is evolving. What happened to Melissa wasn't simple. It wasn't just about a forbidden attraction or a failing marriage. It was about years of unspoken pain, unmet needs, and two people who had grown apart without realizing it until it was almost too late. There's no neat ending here. No perfect resolution. Because real life doesn't work that way. Sometimes marriages survive. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes people discover parts of themselves they never knew existed. And sometimes that discovery comes at a cost. The lesson? Pay attention. To your partner. To yourself. To the small moments that, left unaddressed, can grow into canyons between you. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Your support genuinely keeps this channel going and allows me to keep bringing you stories that matter. And if you want to see more complex, real-life stories about relationships, identity, and the messy beauty of being human, check out the video on your screen right now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And remember, your story, whatever it is, deserves to be seen too. I'll see you in the next one.